Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video we're going to be talking about how to use the sustain pedal. When starting to learn the piano, the pedals can be a bit confusing and they're often the last thing to get added to your piano playing. So in this video I'm going to demystify the most used of the pedals and help you understand what to do with the sustain pedal and when to do it. So firstly, what is the sustain pedal? Well, the sustain pedal is the pedal that is on the right hand side. On some pianos you may have 3 pedals, on some you may have 2, but it's always the one that's on the right hand side. And if you are working with an electric piano, it's often the case where you are given just the one pedal, which will be the sustain pedal. So what the sustain pedal does is it makes the notes last longer. Inside of a piano there are lots of strings, and usually for the mid to high strings there are 3 strings per note. Each of those 3 strings sound the same, but it just pads out the texture of each of the notes. So when you press a key on the piano, a hammer is actually hitting 3 strings at the same time, and that creates the note. There is also something called a dampener which sits against the strings, and this lifts up every time you press the key down, and then it goes back down again whenever you stop playing the key in order to make the note stop playing. So what the sustain pedal does is it lifts up all the dampeners on all of the strings so that the notes just keep ringing. So why would you want the notes to keep ringing? Well, there are 88 keys on the piano and we don't have 88 fingers. So sometimes we need to keep notes ringing so that we can play other notes over the top of them, and we do this using the sustain pedal. The general rule for using the sustain pedal is to use it when the chords change, and if you are playing a chord and then have to play a melody higher up, it's going to be hard to do this with just 2 hands. So the pedal can be used to keep the chord ringing while you play other things on the piano. So here is how and when you should use the pedal. There are generally speaking 2 forms of pedaling. There is direct pedalling and there is indirect pedalling. If you are starting a phrase or a piece, or you're just playing a chord without having played anything before, then you will use direct pedalling. And what this means is that you put your foot down at the same time as your hands. What this will do is sustain the notes as you're actually playing them. So as soon as you let go of the notes, they'll keep going. This is used a lot to fill out texture or to add atmosphere, or if there's just very few chords, then you may find that you only need to pedal when you are playing the chord. However, this doesn't work if you have 2 consecutive chords, because if you lift up your foot to play the second chord, there will be a gap in sound where your foot gets lifted at the same time as your hand getting lifted to play the next chord. Now, before I delve into indirect pedaling, it's important to note that it isn't always the case that a chord is represented by multiple notes at the same time. You may be playing something where there are several notes that make up a chord, or there is just a general chordal idea where the pedal needs to be held. So you may find that you're playing multiple notes that together make a chord, but they're not at the same time. So, indirect pedaling. Indirect pedaling is where you are lifting up your foot at the same time as putting your hands down. This is the most commonly used form of pedaling because what it allows you to do is join up chords while your hand's lifting from one place to another. So when you hear piano pieces and it sounds like it's all linked together and it's all very smooth, this is usually because the player is using indirect pedaling to cover the gaps between their hands moving. So the way that you do this is your foot will already be down from a previous chord, and then you lift your foot up as you play the notes, and then you put it straight back down again before you lift your hand back up. For someone who has never done any pedaling before, this is actually surprisingly difficult to maintain. And it's just because your feet and your hands want to go in the same direction. And it's hard to have some independence in the way that your feet and your hands are moving. However, a very simple way to practice this is to just use one finger and play a scale or a series of notes on the piano, and practice trying to join the notes up with the pedal. When you're actually playing the keys, it's impossible to join the notes up if you're only using one finger. So you'll find that you'll naturally try and find a way of joining that gap with the pedal. The key here is to not only make sure that there is no gap, but to also make sure that you aren't overlapping the notes with the pedal. Once you've practiced with just one finger playing some notes on the piano, and you find that you can do the pedaling, then try and do this with chords. So try and play multiple notes on the piano at the same time. And then once you have this, then try and actually look at a piece of music and see if you can identify where the chords change. This might be where the bass note moves, or it might be a right hand pattern. Once you've identified this in a piece of music, then you've just got to practice trying to lift the pedal up and put it straight back down again. With indirect pedaling, it's very important that you are as quick as possible in lifting and putting back down again. The reason for this is because you've got to get the pedal back down again before your hand lifts up, so that the pedal is sustaining the notes that you are currently holding down. I hope this has been useful, and if you have any techniques for pedaling, or you are still confused and need any help with pedaling, then let me know in the comments. And if you found this video useful, then hit me with a like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.